Hello, wonderful humans of Earth. I am Jimmy Tripp, also known as BRAINWAVE, or BRAINWAVE, also known as Jimmy Tripp, and I'm very excited to feature my great uncle, Jeff Stover, on this second episode of the TakeATripp Podcast. Before going straight into it, I am going to give a quick heads up and disclaimer. We will be discussing topics of addiction and recovery, which may be triggering for some viewers, especially those who are either currently in recovery or have been in recovery for a while now. And I don't know, it just could be some sensitive topic material. So you may not want to show this video to your children exactly, for example. Now, we will also be discussing Delta 8 and Delta 9 THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the cannabis plant a little bit as well at the end, discussing how it has helped both of us and how we kind of look at it a little bit differently from how it might have been viewed before in the programs such as like 12-step program or facilities that perhaps wouldn't advocate for it. Now, I understand that I probably look pretty baked in this video. Yes, I look pretty high, but I'm going to assure you right now, no cannabis was ingested before the recording of this video. We are both just very tired individuals, very sleepy individuals with very heavy eyes. We're otherwise very sober, unless you can count coffee. We did have caffeine before recording this podcast episode. We tried to record this podcast episode in, I believe it was November 2020, and we lost all of the footage for it. So it was very nice to finally be able to meet up in person and be able to finally get this podcast going. Now, I will say that there are some audio bugs, glitches throughout. Some of the audio was not aligned during recording the footage. There were some glitches, bugs that happened throughout, and I had to go in and manually cut and edit and kind of align the audio back into place in certain parts. So if you hear little bits of silence inserted, that is why. So don't worry, the video's still playing as normal. It's just tried to do what I could to save the audio and master it and bring it up to level and polish it and detail it as much as I could as well. But like I said, it was recorded through camera audio. So yes, with that, I hope you do enjoy this second episode of the TakeATripp Podcast. Yeah! Hello, wonderful humans of Earth. I am Jimmy Tripp, also known as BRAINWAVE, or BRAINWAVE, also known as Jimmy Tripp, and I am recording this podcast here with my great uncle today, a very, very special guest on this podcast, because with the way that life is and the way that illnesses are, you never know when the last day to get an opportunity like this may come. So I may be watching this back 10 years from now and finding a lot of value in it still.
And I might be dead.
And he might be gone, yes. So, and we'll be talking about his story a lot in this podcast today with this second episode now of the TakeATripp Podcast. First episode with a guest on it. Mm-hmm. So yes, if you watched the last introduction episode, I spoke a little bit about how I want to have many different guests on this podcast, and my great uncle here, he has an incredible backstory of just everything that he has been through with recovery in the last 10 years or so, and just his what he's been actually going through with cancer and with getting disability for that and remission and just all kinds of just it is an incredible story. So we're going to actually be going into that some today. But I'm going to I guess just throw it over.
Throw me some questions.
Throw you some questions. Yeah.
Better at answering questions.
So tell everyone a little bit about I guess just who you are, where you come from, what life looks like right now for you, like just a little bit about you.
All right. Well, right now I'm 58 years old. I grew up in West Virginia near Beckley. I had a great childhood, wonderful parents, both of them teachers. No issues with family life at all. Because a lot of people, especially when it comes to recovery, they always think there's going to be some kind of problems in your childhood. And I really didn't have that at all. Wonderful parents, wonderful childhood. But as I grew up, even in high school, like I started smoking weed. And I maybe did that and drank some probably up until about, I was probably 40-ish, 40 years old. When, as everyone else has probably heard about, or not probably, I'm sure you have, the oxycodone, Oxycontin thing. And that's exactly where my problem started.
The painkillers.
No, the painkillers. Man, the first one I snorted, I had a friend introduce me to it, of course. First one I snorted, I immediately felt like I was walking a couple feet off the ground. Best feeling in the world. As I learned later in recovery, one of the things about addiction is that you'll probably always be trying to capture that first high again, which never happened. It didn't matter how much I did. But I went on, and that was in about the year 2000, I guess it was. The next 10 years was a solid downhill with that addiction to OxyContin. And oxycodone. It got to the point where I was robbing my mother of thousands of dollars over the years. Thousands of dollars. My biggest regret that I did that. I turned into a professional liar. I was able to come up with stories about anything, a reason to get money on a daily basis. And that, I finally discovered that was not what I wanted to do. The problem was, I thought that there would be no way I could ever live another day without my drugs. I just thought there was no way. If I tried to stop, I felt like I was going to die. I was sure I was going to die.
There's some science there. It's the homeostasis in your brain, the pH levels in your body. They have to have enough time to reset back to normal again.
But I never thought that would happen.
You never thought
it would happen? In reality, everything we read about it, I had a good friend, my best friend, still my best friend today. We were doing it. This was our joint thing. Neither of us had any more blame than the other. It was the two of us doing this every day. Well, we both were trying to figure out a way to stop this. And everything we read is like, well, if you can just go 5 days without taking the drugs, you're going to be fine. Those 5 days are going to be hell. But after that, everything's going to be okay. It was probably 2 or 3 years before we actually quit that we knew we had a problem, but we did not know what to do about it. And like I say, we thought if we stopped, we were going to die.
That mindfulness and awareness of it, though, still, that goes a long way.
Well, like I say, we knew it. We knew it was not the thing to do. We knew we wanted to stop. Down to the last, say, 6 months before we did actually find a way to do something about it, we were figuring that if we could just find a way, which we still didn't know what to look for, we knew we had to stop. We wanted something to happen. We couldn't wait for something to happen. Something
almost like an intervention.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we were looking for. Something along the lines of an intervention. Well, that came about when your grandpa, my brother-in-law, my mother had a slight stroke. And so my sister and brother-in-law came up to take care of it.
Was that 2014? 14? Yes, that was 2014. Yep, I remember that too.
And so when they did, and he was helping with paying her bills and things like that and getting into her checkbook, he started seeing all of these checks written to me every single day. I got a phone call at home from him, and he said, hey, I've been looking through this stuff. I see this. What's going on? I was ready for that intervention. I said one word, drugs. That's all I said. No explanation, just that, because I wanted something to happen.
That was kind of like that was almost like the pit where someone was up on top out of the hole, and they were throwing you a lifeline. They were throwing you a rope or a ladder.
Well, not yet.
Almost.
He explained. He said, I have enough evidence here that you could go to jail for a long time. And which he was absolutely true. I knew that because I'd already felt bad about it for years. And I knew it wasn't the right thing to do. But he said, let me think about it and I'll call you back. So, we still didn't know what to do. But we thought, hey, great, something's finally happening.
Yeah, it is.
And what he did, and we had tried things on our own. We had tried methadone clinic. We had tried psychiatrists, psychologists, for Suboxone. None of those things worked. So when he called back, he wanted us to meet at my mother's church, and in hopes that the pastor might have some suggestions for us. Went to the church. It's just me, Bob, and the pastor, and my best friend. And the pastor started giving us suggestions. Well, his first suggestion was the methadone clinic.
And you probably
and me and my buddy just kind of looked at each other.
Tried that.
And yeah, we tried that. Then came the Suboxone. We tried that. And actually, we kind of chuckled at that. And I don't think they appreciated us chuckling at it. But it's basically, you could tell that he didn't know, which, yes. I mean, it didn't hold that against him. I mean, this is probably the first time anybody approached him for help with drugs. And you could tell that he basically probably just went down through a list in the yellow pages. And that's what he was giving us.
When I was growing up, it was always the blanket term or umbrella of everything is Schedule 1 or should be treated Schedule 1, including pot, and none of it has any medicinal value. It's all terrible.
It's a substitution.
But no one knew any better.
That's right.
No one knew.
No one knew. Some people were successful with it. So can't hold it totally against
them. No, you can't.
But
you really can't.
There was a lot of people there. It was just like it was a free high, legal high, and that's what we did. And so, anyway, we decided to suggest, let us go home, let us do some research and see what we can find. And we hadn't done that before.
Sorry. I was bumping
we were bouncing.
Yep.
And the deck's solid. This is a new deck.
It's not the deck doing this.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's not the deck. We're not getting any faults. We're cool. Anyway, so yeah, they agreed to that. So we went home and we looked on the internet, and guess what? Google did it again. We Googled long-term recovery, West Virginia, hit enter, and Google popped up with this place in Huntington, West Virginia called Pinecrest.
I've never heard of it.
And we looked into it, and sure enough, that's what these folks did. Is a residential treatment center that is specialized in opiates and alcohol, basically any addiction. So we thought, well, what the heck?
That was my big generational curse. Alcoholism.
No. That's going on for years, dude. Years.
Yep.
So anyway, we gave them a call. And they said, sure, we can help you. It'll be a couple of weeks before we can get you in, but let us get your information. We'll get your intake started. And it's like, bam, overnight. If we would have just looked that way before, looked on Google before, we would have known before we could have done that. But we did that. Got set up. Of course, as time went on, we're still doing the drugs. And we called and told Bob about it and everything, and he was all cool with that. But as this couple of weeks went on, I decided, man, I've got too much stuff going on. I'm still working my job, still have my house.
Because you were a school bus driver, right?
Not then.
Not then.
No, I was working at the newspaper then.
I worked at
the newspaper as a senior copy editor for 35 years, so I was a very, very functional addict.
Yes. Which, that's something not a lot of people generally consider when they look at an addict. They don't think to themselves, this person's able to function and look just like me or you.
I'm sure some people have heard the term functional alcoholic, same deal. They may go to work every day and nobody knows anything about alcohol, but as soon as they walk out that door, boom, there it goes. So that's the functional thing about it.
That's big in the culture.
Of course, now with the drugs, I had to have them to go to work. I had to have the drugs to go to work.
Otherwise, you didn't feel normal.
And everybody at work would say, are you feeling bad today? If I haven't had my drugs, the people were saying to me, is there something wrong? Are you sick today?
You almost looked more ill if you didn't have it.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Absolutely. But anyway, so those 2 weeks went on. Decided I had all those other things to take care of, so I backed out. I decided to take my buddy down there, and I backed out. I said, I'll get a hold of, I had a psychologist years before, the guy I was telling you about, and I'll talk to him. I'll see what he can do for me. Maybe he can help me out. So I did, took my buddy down there. He was calling me every couple of days, telling me his progress. And after, about a week and a half, I started hearing a different person on the other end of the phone. And he was telling me what he was learning there, and the people that was helping him, the counselors that was helping him. And the counselors were addicts too, that had gotten clean and gotten into the business of helping other addicts.
They had a lot of personal testimony and experience.
Absolutely. And so, and that's the best people.
Those are always the best people.
Absolutely.
I think so too.
And so anyway, at the end of that week and a half or so, I forget exactly what he said to me, but I said, I think maybe I really should try that. And he just said 4 words: I think you should. And that's all it took.
It usually takes seeing another friend or family member go and get treatment or help for something.
And he was brave enough to do it. Thank goodness.
And it's like a web. It's have you ever heard the saying, you will never lose your fire from lighting another person's candle with your fire or your flame?
I hadn't heard that.
It's very similar like that. It's contagious. You see someone else going and bettering their life or trying to get help, and it almost inspires you to do the same.
Absolutely did.
Your story
when I heard,
inspired me greatly.
Right, when I heard him, it was just like, this is a different person I'm talking to. Happiest I'd heard him in years. And he was in a treatment center, and he was happier than being out of it.
Yeah.
That's really crazy.
Now,
so he gave me a guy's phone number down there, one of the counselors. I called him, talked to him. His name is Gordon, great guy. He said, I can't personally get you in here, but if you call every day and just bug the piss out of them,
then they have no choice.
Then they'll get you
in the list.
So when I called down there, it's gonna be another 2 weeks. I said, dude, I can't do 2 weeks. So I said, can I call you back tomorrow and see if you got any beds open up? So I did that, and I did that thing every day. And as a matter of fact, I got to the point after a week, I went down there. I packed everything I could in my house, got the pets taken care of. I had a lady that ran an animal rescue place. She gladly took our pets for us to take care of them. Actually, I figured, I'd be back there, which is another story.
No, but
well, I mean, we're still in the same vein, but same deal. But anyway, packed everything in my Jeep, went to Huntington, got a hotel room, called the guy the next day. I said, man, I'm here. I am in Huntington. I don't have a house. I'm having to stay in a hotel room. I am less than a mile from you. I can be there. You say the word. 2 days later, they had me in there.
That's
quick. So, it was really
cool.
But that was the start of my recovery. From that recovery, there were group sessions where everybody shared. I learned a big thing there about all of us addicts being alike. There was a room full of us, probably 25 of us in one room in a circle. And the counselor just basically having us all introduce ourselves and give a little story about ourselves. And I'm looking across the room. This guy's still a good friend of mine. And here's this 22-year-old dude with, he had black sandals on, Nike sandals, black socks, black shorts, black shirt, black flat bill cap.
Almost like me in high school.
With a beard. And he was sitting there with a combing his beard. And I'm thinking, I have absolutely nothing in common with that dude. Mm-hmm. I was just judging the hell out of them. Addicts are good at that. We judge everybody. And thing was, I told my little story, got around to him, and he started telling his. Holy crap. Our stories were almost exactly the same.
Just brought you down to earth in the sense of...
it's that we're all the same. Too. We're all the same. Mm-hmm. And like I say, we ended up being good friends. Still are good friends today, and that's been 8 years ago.
Wow.
And so...
do you know what he does now, or is he...
Yeah, he is. He actually works for the power company.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit, or speak a little bit about when you went in, how do these centers work, or these treatment centers work? Are they showing you root causes on...
Man, there's a little bit of everything. I mean, they start out simple with the groups. We get to know each other, learning things like we're all alike. We all have the same problem, but we also can all recover the same way.
You have the same amount of potential.
Yeah, it does. It goes through every little thing, the causes, where in the brain that this addiction is centered, which is pretty much close to the center of the brain.
Oh, yeah.
What is that thing called? I forget what it's called now. There's a little...
Prefrontal cortex? That's the front. That's the front.
Yeah, it's in this very, like in the very center, and I can't remember what it's called.
I know. Yeah.
When you are addicted to things, your brain changes. That's the whole deal. People think that it's all choice. It's not. Choice.
It becomes a disease.
It may start as a choice. Little things. Yeah, I agree. That was a mistake for me to do that first OxyContin. But
or a lesson.
Over time, and now it's a lesson.
Now in hindsight.
Absolutely. Yep. But then, as you do it more and more and more, your brain actually changes. Things like the pain relief. Yes. As your body has natural ways of combating pain, for example. When you do drugs or alcohol or whatever that kind of dulls some pain, it kind of backs down on what your body can do to handle pain. So indeed, after a while of doing it, especially several years, you do feel pain if you don't have those drugs. And it ain't just a thinking thing. It's an actual physical thing that goes on inside of your brain that handles the pain in your body.
Have you heard of the late Alan Watts quote? The mind is a terrible master. It's a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. That almost makes me think of this. Your brain is rewiring itself through addiction.
It absolutely is. But then the thing to keep in mind is when you get off drugs. So, okay, let's go through this treatment center just a little bit to get you there. The first 5 days in that treatment center, you were in what's called detox section.
Okay. So that's first.
They offered you some medications, not narcotics, but I mean, like, Tylenol or things like that.
Stuff you could get over the counter. Yeah, essentially.
Right. That handles it. They got actual
nothing too intense.
Doctors, nurses. If there's something that you do need that is a prescription, the doctors there can take care of that. So anyway, they cover all that. They watch you to make sure everything's good. You got special rooms. They know some people are going to get sick and throwing up and all this good stuff. So anyway, you get that detox thing. You're also there with a group. These are like dorm rooms. This building was actually in an old hotel. It's what it was. So each room was just like a regular hotel room, 2 beds in it, bathroom, blah, blah, blah. And so 2 people in there in each room. And like I said, detox for the first week. That's where I was getting to where I was talking about, after 5 days, the physical stuff goes away. That's why your detox is only 5 days. So the physical stuff, the rest of it is going to be what's in your head.
90% of the treatment is actually learning the coping mechanisms. They tell you,
yeah, exactly. They tell you, what you can do if you start thinking about doing drugs. What you should do? You should contact. Keep friends' phone numbers. They introduced us to Narcotics Anonymous, best organization in the world. I don't care that I was in Narcotics Anonymous. I don't care about being anonymous about that because it was such a great group.
In other words, he doesn't mind putting his face in front of the anonymous.
Because if anybody to go, if anybody needs help, maybe not needing to go to a treatment center, find a Narcotics Anonymous group, na.org online, and you can find a meeting wherever you are. And those meetings, you're absolutely anonymous. You don't go in and tell. You don't even have to say anything.
You don't even have to go to the full treatment.
None of that. Yeah. You just go to these meetings, which are usually 7 p.m. and they last an hour. There's free coffee at every one of them. I promise you that because yes, we are all over coffee. But if you don't want to speak, you don't have to. You can just sit there and listen to all these other addicts that have gone through stuff that either are telling you that their struggles right now or what they have struggled with in the past and how they were able to get over it. I mean, it's just a huge support group. At some point, if you keep going back, you'll start making friends. You'll start getting these phone numbers of people. Usually at the first meeting, they'll pass around a piece of paper, and everybody will write their phone number on it with their first name. And if you feel like using drugs, you call somebody on that list and you say, hey, man, I feel like doing this again. What?
It's almost like an accountability partner.
And that's not just one person. I mean, you can go down that whole list and call everybody on the list if you want to.
Oh, yeah.
But at some point,
and
once you're there for a while, you'll start hearing the recovery and the things they did to do it. There's what they call step work. Step work is a guidebook. It's a workbook, about that thick, and it helps you learn about yourself, the reasons that you were doing these addictive behaviors, what you can do to get out of doing that. There's a whole lot of learning about yourself in these books. It's very about, I mean, I know a lot of people that aren't even addicts that need to go through this.
Now, I have a very interesting question here with the past that first 5 days or so with the detox, because I didn't know that previously, that only 1 week or so of that is the actual detoxing itself.
Right.
How much was like something like spiritual mindfulness, meditation practices implemented in the treatment?
It's just a small part.
It's a small part.
They give you all the options.
Okay.
Whatever works. Meditation works for some people great.
That worked for me.
And NA, that's one of the things in there that they encourage you to do some meditating. Again, it works for some people, it doesn't for some. But that's why they provide you with a lot of different options, a lot of different things.
My meditation is lousy now, but
well,
I mean, into that.
And like I say, and it may just take a little enlightening something to get you the switch to get flipped.
It is like a light switch too.
Oh yeah,
it really
most
is.
Everything is. You feel like you're going along, and it's like, yeah, this is getting a little bit. This is looking. Why hasn't just like? But then, and moving again, they give you all kinds of options in there. Okay, NA. Same thing. A lot of options, plus a lot of support from all these other people that are addicts that are in there. The step working to learn about yourself. When you do the step working, you just don't do it on your own. You get yourself what's called a sponsor. A sponsor, that's somebody else in the group that you have listened to, and you say, man, that person's really got it together. I'd like to be like them. And the people that have been there a while are glad to be sponsors, and they may sponsor more than one person. It might be somebody that's been in there for 20 years. It could be somebody that's been in there for 2 years. That's just that has found good recovery. But they help you with it. So when you come up with questions like this question makes absolutely no sense to me in the step working guide, call up your sponsor. Your sponsor will help lead you through that, and they have all the tools and resources. Right, they've already been through it. Yeah, they've understood what this question is about. So I mean, and different speeds. There's no, you don't have to have this done in any certain time period. Some people might go through the whole thing in 6 months. Some people might take 6 years,
and it's fine.
And that's
everyone's
fine. That's
different.
Right.
Everyone's different. No one's behind. Nobody's behind. No one's left behind.
But let me throw this one thing in here about the flipping the switch deal. I've always had this thing about, I'm a procrastinator. I'm still a procrastinator. I ain't worried about that. But I would always put off things or avoid things. For example, and this involves his grandpa, my brother-in-law, after I got out of recovery, I went to what was called a recovery. That by the way, that journey there was 7 weeks. 1 week for the detox and 6 weeks residential treatment. Didn't leave the facility, fed there. The government covered it. I didn't have to pay a penny out of my pocket.
Yeah, it was subsidized.
Well, it's actually through Medicaid.
Medicaid. Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay. But they paid for everything. I didn't have to pay a penny. Didn't even have to talk to anybody about it. They took care of it all. So anyway, got through that. Went from there. My plans were, because I didn't know anything about it, was when I got out of there, I was ready. I was going to go to Florida. I was going to go to Florida and do everything was going to be great, perfect. Well, that's not how it works. The longer I stayed there, the more people started to say on me, well, it's still going to take you some time to get out in the real world now and be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So we had what were called recovery houses in town. There were several of them. I went to a new one where my best friend that had already been there, he left 2 weeks before me because he finished up, because he started earlier than me. He went to this recovery house, and so I went there where he was. That was privately owned. I had to pay for that. So that encouraged us to go out and get a job. But we were still in kind of an environment where we had these other people that were also in recovery, that were also there, that if you were thinking about doing something, you could talk to them because they're right next to you. And so stayed in there.
A lot of accountability.
For a long time. Actually left his houses after probably 2 years. And then my buddy started his own. Like I was talking about, these other addicts that went on to help other people in recovery. Well, he started his own house. He ended up with 3 houses.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right next to each other.
It's really cool.
And I moved in with him, and I helped him with that. Mm-hmm. We started seeing people falling out, and that's at that point in time is when they made it legal for basically anyone with a training class to administer Narcan. So we both went and got our Narcan certifications, and they gave us free Narcan.
Which I have to say, that is the best thing you can ever do, especially if you know someone who struggles with fentanyl or with heroin. Fentanyl's its own demon.
Yeah, fentanyl is really
having
bad.
Narcan on hand just to save your best friend's life, potentially.
Well, it ended up, like I said, we had 3 houses, or he had 3 houses. I was helping him. We saved 5 people, anyway.
Wow.
If we hadn't
Really?
used Narcan on them, they would be dead. There was actually, though...
5 different people's lives with the Narcan.
Yes. There were 3 people that couldn't be saved. I mean, you tried. We Narcaned the hell out of them, but it was just too late, or they took too much at that point. Okay. Usually it was heroin at that point. Heroin. That's also, while I was in this transition, the government realized that there was this problem with oxycodone and OxyContin, so they became really strict on it.
Yes.
Well, when that happened, then the guys from Detroit, and that ain't no lie, the guys from Detroit started bringing in the heroin, and that's when all the heroin overdoses started
Cartels
happening.
got worse.
And I don't know, you guys may have heard it, but I was in Huntington, West Virginia. Huntington, West Virginia was the overdose capital of the world. Not exaggeration, not of the state, not of the nation.
Next was Ohio, right?
It was Ohio. I don't know, but I know West Virginia was the number 1 in the world. We had 13 overdose deaths in one day in just our city. So
that was an average?
That wasn't an average. That was a 13 in one day thing.
Wow.
And, well, that was the biggest day, worst day. But I mean, every day somebody was dying. Where I was in Narcotics Anonymous, I mean, just because you're in there doesn't mean that you're going to stay clean. There's a lot of people. I can't count on all my fingers and all my toes the number of people I know that overdosed and died in my little town of Huntington.
And you knew them personally.
And I knew them personally, and most of them were in Narcotics Anonymous. There's relapse. Relapse happens. Not everybody. It doesn't have to, but it does, and it's a high percentage, and that nobody will argue that. That's always been the case. Yeah. But if one life is saved, one life is saved.
That was still a life that was saved.
That is a life that is saved.
And that's
just like with the Narcan.
That's a potential family that doesn't have to grieve.
Absolutely.
Potential person that now has started their own family, and they're doing
think
great.
About the people you saved with Narcan. Some of those people,
I'll always advocate for
the guy that I was talking about, my friend, the guy that was sitting across the room that I said I had nothing in common with, he was saved by Narcan.
He was. Wow.
See, he could be dead now.
He wouldn't be at that power line company today if it weren't for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't have been in there.
Or wouldn't have been in there.
So we went on. We had those houses. My buddy did. He eventually moved away to get married. I took over. He had already gotten rid of 2 of the houses. I took over the other house. I held it for a couple of years. Again, like we were talking about the people that you're able to help. There was one of the guys that had been in the house when my buddy ran it, and he would relapse. Every time he would get a job, he would get his first paycheck, and he would go out and get a prostitute and crack, and you wouldn't see him for a week.
Yeah.
And this happened over and over. This is a repeat thing.
More call-outs.
And so he went back to his home in Missouri, I think it was. Anyway, and he decided that's where all his trouble started. So he knew he wasn't going to be able to do anything there. And he started calling all the recovery houses here in Huntington to see if he could get back in. Nobody would take him. But he said, I've only got money for a bus ticket. I don't have money. So he asked me, is there any way you could help me? I said, come on. And today, he's clean. He's married. He's working a great job with AT&T. Has been for a couple of years now. This year was his first wedding anniversary, I guess it was. But he's doing great. And again, it thrills my soul when there's somebody like that I've been able to help.
Because of your testimony. Because you were there to listen.
And that's all. And there's this lovely lady that porch sitting is one of my things. This is why I like the outdoor thing.
We're on a porch right now, if you can't tell.
And this lovely lady, I'd never met her before in my life. Her and her boyfriend stopped by our house because he was trying to get in a recovery house. And she sat down and we just started talking while my buddy talked to him. And she was talking about, I don't know if I could ever do this recovery thing. I'm not sure if I can do this. I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah.
And there's a lot of stigma around it.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of demonization.
And plus, she came from this county where it's like everybody was on drugs there.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Well, anyway, we started talking. I encouraged her to go ahead and try it. So after she did, she went ahead and tried. And she came back and she would talk to me. We got a good rapport going, became good friends, just porch sitting, talking. And ended up that she went back to college. She got her degree.
Wow.
While she was doing that, she was working at a Bob Evans restaurant as a waitress. And my buddy and I went there one day to eat. And she came up and she was thanking me for all I'd done for her. And I said, honey, I didn't do it. You're the one that did all the work.
You're the one that did it.
I just believed in you. That halted her. Look, I'm getting chilled up.
Yeah.
Halted her in her tracks, and she started crying.
You believed in her, and because you believed in her, she was able to believe in herself.
That's right. And now,
it's like the candle analogy.
Guess what?
With the fire.
Now she works for Pinecrest.
Ooh.
And she is like way up there. She's one of the top administrators for recovery now.
Wow. So she works at the same facility you went to for treatment?
Yeah, well, I mean, they have different facilities, but he's all the same company.
Branch.
Yes, right.
That's so cool.
And again, that's one of those people thrills my soul.
And you never knew that was going to happen.
Oh, no. I didn't know that with anybody. It's like all the people I talked to on the porch, one of them might end up dead.
Wow.
The other one ends up helping everybody else in recovery.
So it's always worth it.
It doesn't matter.
It's always worth it.
All I'm doing is listening and believing in people.
And that goes back to that analogy with if you have your light from your candle, your fire, you're never going to get your fire to go out lighting another person's candle, giving them that encouragement or that belief.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes, is believing in people.
The like that light switch thing. Mm-hmm. So you've heard of like having a string kind of like attached to a light switch, right? And then you could be on the other end of the room with the string, and you could tug the string to get the light switch to go on or off. My brother and I used to do little experiments with that growing up in our bedroom. He was always very crafty, so like he would try to do stuff like that, and sometimes we'd trip over it. But neither here nor there. But I kind of think of it like this sometimes. It's like I don't know all the people I'm helping with my story sometimes, and you don't know all the people you're helping with your story sometimes. The light switch is still turning on and off. It's just there's a string. It's an invisible string, and you could be all the way over here before you realize that string connected and got that switch to turn on.
Now that you mentioned that, I didn't finish that story about the light switch thing.
Yeah, continue.
That was when I'm talking about my brother-in-law, Bob. I was not paying a payment on my vehicle, and they were helping me out because I was going through recovery and all this stuff. And he just basically told me I can't continue to do this, which I understood that totally. The thing was, he kept sending me emails and emails, and I would just ignore it. that procrastination thing.
Yeah.
And then if I ignore
It's
it,
in all
nothing's
of
going to
us.
happen. And so, I mean, this literally went on for months and me worrying about it the whole time. Worry. That was one of my big problems. Even before I became an addict, I would worry about stuff that I didn't need to worry about or I couldn't do anything about. But it would occupy all this time in my head.
Kind of like having a tenant in your head that's not...
That he's not paying rent.
Yeah, and it's leaving a mess.
And,
There's a mess inside.
and there's so many, like, I have so many scenarios that may go over in my head over and over, all these different thousands of them, that what might happen or what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Well, one day, after I'd gone to an NA meeting and somebody else talked about this, they said, you just got to address these things. You just got to do something about it. So the very next time he wrote me, and I knew I was going to lose my vehicle. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm working at Amazon. I'm not going to have a ride to get there, blah, blah, blah. But I decided, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to answer him. I was like, yes, I know I'm wrong. I'm sorry I didn't answer you. I understand you can't keep paying this. Let's do whatever we got to do. And I thought, I'm going to be, out of a job, out of a car, all this stuff. Within like 15 minutes, I get an answer back. Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to come and get it. But my nephew had his car that he wasn't using. I'll bring it up and you can use that car.
Wow.
So all this time that I'd worried about this stuff and gone all over these scenarios that absolutely had nothing to do or didn't work out that way at all.
That higher power.
Within 15 minutes, it was all solved.
Wow.
And that's where I learned that light switch happened.
And what's cool to me,
if I would have just done that from the very start, I wouldn't have had my head all messed up with all this stuff for all this time.
What's cool to me is I look at your example at life, and for those that don't know, he's constantly encouraging me all the time, just on social media, because like we don't live in the same area. I actually live in North Carolina. He lives here in Tennessee, but he's constantly giving me this encouragement that looks like it's out of a book someone's written. I mean, it's like, keep it simple. He just says to keep it simple.
That's an NA thing, by the way.
And it's incredible because it's true. If you can keep your thoughts simplified or simplify the equation that we overcomplicate.
We overcomplicate everything.
And then we get worried and then we lose sleep.
So many people that do that.
I've lost so much sleep over just worrying.
And that's the thing. If you can just switch it off, do what you got to do. If you can't do anything about it, don't worry about it. And that's what my psychologist told me years ago. That was also a flip of the switch. So, when these people tell you this, they have experience, especially like with you've got years and years and years of experience of people who've gone through the same thing you've gone through. And so they know. So it's worth listening to what these are saying.
There's a reason that they're certified to do this stuff.
You're not certified.
Herbal,
not DNA. That's just me.
Not DNA. Sorry,
that's just our.
I was thinking of Pinecrest.
Pinecrest.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, and that's wonderful. And yes, to be a professional like that, you do have to be certified. There has to be licensing and all that.
But even that aside, it's like just people who will listen. No certification required. No license required.
And the reason I'm able to encourage him is because I've learned from other people that have learned from other people that have learned from other people, and it worked for them.
For those that don't know, my particular demon happens to be alcohol. It runs in my family. It's alcoholism. It on and off. I would say it got the worst it ever got in 2020, year 2020, because I was working all the time, and then I was only ever just drinking when I got home. And it was
functional
alcoholic. And there were times where I would come in for shifts where it would be early enough the next day where I would get maybe 6 hours of sleep or so, and it'd still be on my breath, but I would be going in working half drunk or half intoxicated or even fully intoxicated state. Especially if liquor was involved. Liquor's the big one there. Liquor's the big demon. Some people can handle it. I happen to be one of those kinds of people that I will have a beer now or 2 beers. But even then, I've had to work on my own boundaries now with being able to say no to people or being able to say, enough is enough there. I am okay with where I am right now in this beverage. Or I am okay with today just not having any alcohol at all. And it's a very good practice for mindfulness and just being able to keep more of a I guess a head on, so to speak. But in 2020, it was bad again. And we were trying to record this podcast we're recording right now in 2020 at a time where I actually was getting very bad into it again. I want to say I got so much worse into it probably 2 or 3 weeks after we tried to even record the podcast, and then we lost the data. That's why this has been so late in the making. But I'm actually glad that this worked out better this way, because I don't think I was all that great up here anyway 2 years ago to even be able to do something like this. So,
well, I've been encouraging what I see out of you. I mean, he writes a lot. This is a genius, by the way, and he writes a lot. And you can just, if you go back and would read things from then and up to now, that some of that simplicity is coming in there.
Yeah, it's taken a long time.
Well,
it's like a garden.
This stuff doesn't have,
and with the fruit that grows.
I've been clean 8 years, and it's taken 8 years to where I feel comfortable being clean. My clean day is June 29th, 2014. Never forget it.
Now, we talked a little bit, I remember, a couple of years ago on this, in the last podcast attempt. Legal THC. Legal CBD, the cannabis plant in general, or as it's most commonly referred to here in the States, marijuana. Now that it has the legality it does, at least with the Delta 8 compound of THC that has, it's much less severe potency, more functional, more clean, clear in the head.
Yeah, it doesn't have the
as much of the psychoactive ingredients. It doesn't have all of the same terpenes that are responsible for as much of the short-term memory loss, as much of the brain fog into the next month or so. Because when I used to be a avid Delta 9 THC smoker, and back in the day, that used to just be too much for me. That was too intense, at least after a while of it. I would say in moderation it wasn't so bad, but I am one such person that when it comes to balance or moderation of any kind, I'm a procrastinator on moderation.
I think procrastinator is the right word for it, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Or lazy with the moderation, I should say.
Not going to stop.
Lazy with the meditation. That's the word I'm looking for. If
one is too many and 1,000 is never enough.
Exactly.
That's from NA.
What did
and
you
that's
say?
a fact. One is too many and 1,000 is never enough.
And what did you say before at the beginning of the podcast when you said that it's like you're just chasing that same high that you got in the beginning?
You're trying to get the
That's what it feels like
again.
after a while.
Yeah,
even with something like THC, which this is a controversial thing to say nowadays.
I'm telling you. Well, the majority of the people, and if you look at the votes that are getting out, the majority of the people are in favor of at least medical marijuana, if not complete legalization for recreational use as well. I feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have cancer. I have several.
And I have autism. So
he has autism.
It helps with that.
And these are things that can help me with. I can't
Inflammation.
get that help here in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. They have not passed laws to allow legal marijuana.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. It's slow, but it's getting there.
I mean, well, I think we're going to become a national thing. There's, like I say, the majority of everybody is saying that at least medical marijuana should be legal.
No,
Delta 8, I've tried that. Did not help me in the least.
And it's interesting because everyone's brain chemistry is different.
It is. It's different from person to person. Now, if I were to smoke a real joint, it would help me.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say this: not when I lived here, but after my cancer diagnosis, I had cancer in two places. I had a tumor here, and they called it tonsillar cancer, except it wasn't tonsils, but that's what they call it, and spots on my lungs. Well, they did radiation treatment on this tumor, 2 weeks, and it was gone. It was gone.
And that's the inflammation. It's because the cannabinoids actually treat the inflammation.
Well, no, they hadn't got to that yet. And when they did the radiation treatment, where they were shooting that radiation up through here, it burnt the inside of my mouth.
Mm.
They didn't tell me this could happen. But after about a week, after the radiation treatment ended, my mouth was burnt up so much. It was 3rd-degree burns on the entirety of my inside of my mouth.
Wow.
Tongue, roof of my mouth, cheeks,
Oof,
under my tongue. I could not eat. There was drool coming out of my face all the time. Couldn't drink water. Couldn't drink it. I lost 30 pounds in 24 days. Mm-hmm. They ended up putting me in the hospital.
I think I remember that. I remember that
hospital.
Period of time, actually.
And I
saw some of the pictures.
Oh yeah, I've got pictures on my phone. I look like
it was
shit.
bad. It was.
But they ended up eventually putting in a feeding tube, which was fine. It saved my life. I'll say that. But I still, even as that started to heal, I still didn't have an appetite. I was afraid to eat almost. Mm-hmm. So I continued to lose weight. I'll say this now too. At one point in my life, I weighed 315 pounds. Right now, this day, I weigh 130 pounds. And
you're 10 pounds.
And I have just been averaging about 130 pounds for the past.
Me and him are about the same weight here, actually.
And I used to weigh 315 pounds. Crazy. Anyhow, but I still did not have the desire to eat. I was forcing myself through the feeding tube and all that, but I was ready to get rid of that feeding tube. And so I talked to some people in it, and they knew what was going on with me, and I told them what was going on. One of my buddies, I knew he smoked weed, and I talked to him about it. He said, come on up. I went up there, and for 1 week, I smoked weed. Had a blast, first of all. Always did.
Yeah.
But my appetite returned. Mm-hmm. I was able to eat real food. And I eat it on a regular basis.
There's a compound now called THCV, which was just recently discovered in the plant. And THCV, it's more present in certain strains than other strains, but that it's very, very responsible for inducing appetite more than anything else.
Even my cancer doctor here prescribed me Marinol. And I thought, oh, this is gonna take care. It's like the Delta 8 Delta. That has not done a thing for me.
And that's interesting because for me, it's opposite. I actually find incredible benefits in legal Delta 8.
Like I say, I tried it, thought it might work, but it did not. Absolutely not.
It helps me get work done. I'm able to work very hard with it.
If I could smoke a joint, I'd get here and you tell you what, I could get work done. I could eat. I would not feel as much pain.
Now,
it's just because this is my past experience. I'm not just, wanting to get high. I'm saying
no, exactly. Same here. Same here. It went from, it was a shift in the year 2016 or so. My whole focus was, I just want to get messed up as possible. And then in the last several years now, but especially last year, I just thought to myself, I want to put all the focus on function. Being able to function better and being able to work harder. And I find that that's very possible in sativa dominant strains of at least for me, Delta 8. But I understand there's lots of people out there that they need the real thing. I mean, they need the actual real thing.
And it's because, I don't want to be a drug addict.
Or do that. And we're not necessarily trying to condone anything legal or illegal here either.
Right. I'm talking about all your medical benefits.
Medical benefits are there though, and that can't be argued. I mean, now there are, of course, the cons to consider, such as there is that short-term impairment of memory and learning and capability, at least in high doses. But even then, that's not as detrimental as something like heavy alcohol use, which has been legal. Oxycodone. Which is
very addictive.
And it's been legal for how long now? It's prescribed by doctors.
And if y'all pay attention to stuff, follow the money trail.
It's follow the money trail.
Get this.
Pharmaceutical industry.
If you guys didn't know this, the guys that created OxyContin, the pharmaceutical company did, well, when it became a problem, they are the ones that invented the antidote for it. So they were making money on getting you addicted to it, and then they were trying to make money on trying to cure you, treating you for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know it's a circle, but there's so much money to be
politics, money,
so much money,
all that,
and it's backed by lobbyists.
And what about marijuana? Let's see, it's not addictive. It's a plant that can grow anywhere.
Now, my only counter argument slightly to that would be psychologically, physically, not addictive. Psychologically possible.
Well,
possibly.
But
in certain individuals.
But if you like smoked it every day for 10 years, and
it still wouldn't be
and then you stopped and walked away and never touched it again,
you'd be able to go back. You'd still be able to snap back.
You would not have the physical thing.
I know personal.
You might
stories
have just a little bit saying I'd like to do that again. But the physical thing is, and when you don't have that physical thing going on, it's a lot easier to handle the psychological stuff.
I have a friend who I'm part of an active recovery group on Facebook. Actually, I joined it in 2016 when I was trying to actually even stop drinking, or at least drinking as much, and just getting messed up beyond oblivion. And when in that recovery group, I've met a lot of great individuals. I'm friends with some of them on Facebook today, even still. One of them in particular, he was a avid daily religious cannabis smoker for 15 years, and he stopped, and after 1 month of stopping, he was right back to how he was 15 years before. So that just goes to say right there.
It's a plan, and it's all about politics and money.
It's politics and money.
That's all it is. Simple as that.
And it's interesting because we've also, both of us, between the two of us, we have very, very different recovery stories, but also a lot of overlap between both of us, because both of us come back to that same center where it's amazing how much that plant in particular has helped each of us in our recovery, me and you alike. But yeah, I don't know how long this has been going for.
We're probably close to
about an hour, I'm sure. Wow, time really flies when you're having fun talking about politics.
And I was worried about this being able to keep up with what we did the last time. And I think we pretty much covered most everything.
I think we covered about all the bases.
Most of it.
I mean, I covered a little bit of like some of my testimony with it all. You covered yours. I'm glad you got to talk about yours. I am going to try to make the effort to, in this description, include links and resources to what he has talked about here with Pinecrest, the facility that he went to for treatment.
And they're everywhere.
So it doesn't even matter which state.
Google long-term treatment center,
or even NA. If you feel more comfortable, if you feel more comfortable being anonymous about it and just speaking to someone on a hotline, just there's other addicts out there that understand exactly where you're coming from.
Believe it or not, exactly where you've been,
and they're not going to criticize you for it. They're not going to make you feel like you're unsavable.
Right.
They will make you feel the opposite, the contrary. They'll show you it is possible. It's actually possible to get back to feeling like yourself.
There's a new way to live.
There's a new way to live. Well, anyway, yes, this was episode 2 of the Take a Trip podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Why, no problem, my good friend and sore uncle, great Uncle Jeff. Yes, this is great Uncle Jeff Stover, everybody.
Great nephew Tripp.
Give him a round of applause, standing ovation. Woo. He deserves it. Because he's doing great. He's doing awesome every day. And again, he's a very encouraging individual. I'm sure that if you have questions for him after this podcast, he would be more than willing to answer them and not hesitate to answer your questions. So I'll perhaps, is it all right if we include a link to an email or something?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so if you even feel like you would be comfortable reaching out to my uncle or myself, go right ahead with that as well. I'm not always very great about timely responses, but I will try to be my best about it, and I'm sure he's the same way. So
no, I'm better than
he's much better than I am about it. So all right, well, thank you. See you guys on the next podcast. I think the next podcast is probably going to be more musical related. It's going to be with one of my producer friends, and not as centered around like addiction and recovery. So yes, but
if you want to see more of that,
let us know. Let me know. Yes, because I actually really wanted for years now to start covering topics like this. This was something that actually in 2016, funny enough, after I felt a great conviction to start doing stuff like this, just to help other people get better, or to help other people feel like they had that possibility.
Whatever it takes.
Like the Beatles say, all you need is love.
Yeah.
And we're all in this together.
That's right.
They weren't wrong.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, peace.